4 responsibilities of a coach in different sports. Responsibility 1. Insurance. There are 3 main types of insurance. Business equipment insurance, which covers equipment if it gets damaged or broken. Public liability insurance, which covers the cost of legal action if a third party is involved. And employer's liability insurance, which protects against the cost of compensation claims from employees. Business equipment insurance is the coach's responsibility to have, and covers equipment if it gets damaged or broken. This allows companies that have expensive or a lot of equipment to run with the knowledge they are safe if anything goes missing or breaks. However, this is more important for some sports than others. For example, if a gymnastic club breaks their trampoline and it needs replacing, it's going to cost them a fortune, whereas if a tennis coach loses a tube of tennis balls, it won't be as dear to replace. This shows how business equipment insurance is crucial for some sports but not as necessary for others, but is always recommended to have as it can give you peace of mind of your equipment. Public liability insurance covers the cost of legal action and claims of compensation if a third party member got injured or their property suffers damage while at your business or working on your property. This also includes the cost of medical treatment and transportation costs incurred by the NHS, should they claim this amount from your business following an accident. This is vital for a coach, as it means you are safe if someone you are coaching or if a parent who is watching or waiting gets hurt or injured. Despite this, it's more important to have this cover for some sports than others. For example, more dangerous or expensive sports would need this type of insurance a lot more than others. Like take cricket. It costs a senior player around upwards of £500 to buy the full equipment necessary from new. This is a lot of money to rebuy everything if something was to happen at a cricket club. Let's say a fire at the cricket club and it burnt a player's kit, and the player took legal action against the club. The public liability insurance would cover the cost of legal action, even if that includes repaying what the player had lost. On the other hand, for a sport like long distance running, the club, it might not need public liability insurance, as the bulk of injuries, although not intended, would be self-inflicted, like pulling muscles or twisting ankles, and you don't have any equipment for running, as it's the most basic sport there is. However, this is not to say they are safe without it, and are still viable to the repercussions, so no coach should be too careful, and all should make sure they have this insurance. The third is employer liability insurance, which protects you against the cost of claims of compensation if employee illness or injury that occurs as part of the job has happened. This is a legal requirement, and each day without this cover can lead to fines of £2,500. It keeps you and your employees safe. This is because if an employee is hurt or injured, the coach could be held financially liable. However, this insurance covers the cost of compensation and other legal expenses. It safeguards the business while staying on the right side of the law. This is much needed in every sport, and there are no exceptions to this, as accidents can happen at any time and anywhere. For example, from fencing, someone's mask isn't fully covering their neck and they could get jabbed, or someone could be practicing by themselves and accidentally hit an employee with a sword, to rock climbing, where something could fall off a climber and hit a worker, or a hold breaking off the wall, or even faulty equipment. 2 examples of very different sports, but how it can affect either one so easily, so having this insurance is crucial. Responsibility 2. Legal obligations. There are certain legal acts and laws put in place around coaching and how coaches should act. These include things like duty of care, level of qualification, modes of transport, and what to do in set situations. The first on the list of legal obligations is that the sports body at the club needs to take measures for duty of care and safeguarding children. You also have a higher duty of care when working with younger children or the disabled. Child protection is touchy in sport and coaching because there are certain boundaries you cannot cross, whereas you can with older ages. This is as children are normally introduced to sport at very young ages, around 3 to 4 normally, and these coaches must be aware of protection procedures before working with children. All coaches must go through an independent CRB background check to see if they are involved with crime before deciding on whether to employ them. Once employed, they have to make sure not to overstep boundaries or get too friendly with the children, as it can be deemed inappropriate by parents. This is difficult for some sports, as example in gymnastics, if a male coach is coaching a group of under 8 males how to do a certain trick, but they need to have spotters to help them perform. The coach has to be very careful on how he helps the gymnast, as holding a child in the wrong place by accident could cause concern from parents and others. However, if a male coach is coaching a group of female under-8 footballers, there is near to no contact needed in the sport, so the coach is a lot less likely to need to hold the children, which drastically lowers the chance of parents raising concern over them and the safety of their children. Also, to help the protection of children, in 2004 the Children Act was put in place to get coaches to recognise the symptoms and signs of child abuse, which include physical, sexual and emotional abuse and neglect. If a child does show signs of being abused, the coach, depending on their level of qualification, would most likely have to pass this information to a more qualified person to deal with the situation, providing a legislative outlining for services working with children to improve their health and well-being and development. The law also states all coaches must have access to health and safety and emergency numbers and information, with relevant medical information on their athletes. This is so if an accident or injury occurs, the coach can make sure the person's parents or carers are informed of what's happened and are also able to take the best care for the athlete as possible, whether that means immediate medical attention or an asthma pump or EpiPen on standby to help out the performer. For example, if a rugby team is training but one of the players places a tackle and comes in high or late and injures either themselves or their teammate, the coach can assess the situation and take the correct course of action regarding medically and inform the emergency contact person what has happened. This could also be needed if a team were on an away trip but something happened to the transport. It's the coach's responsibility to inform the parents what has happened, but it's also the coach's responsibility to organise the travel to the fixtures or competitions. This can be achieved in two different ways. One is they tell participants to make their own way to the destination. This therefore leaves the coach unaccountable for any accidents or irregularities that happen on the way to the place. Or the other is by taking the participants themselves in a minibus or some other kind of transport, which places the athlete's accountability in their hands, as they are driving all of them. However, this cannot be achieved without a coach having the correct experiences to do so. For example, a minibus licence to drive and permission from the parents if the participants are young. There are also certain things they must take with them, for example a register to make sure nobody is left behind. Responsibility 3 is professional conduct. Professional conduct of coaches is expected to be high, as they are being paid to coach participants, so are expected to give the most they can from a session. The ethics code for coaches is intended to provide standards for professional conduct, meaning coaches have to respect the fundamental rights, dignities and worth of all those taking part in the sport. For example, in women's football there are male coaching staff. The coaching staff have to treat the athletes with respect no matter what their gender. A key example of this not happening recently has been in the England women's team, where the head coach Phil Neville was found having made sexist remarks on Twitter in which he says he expects women to be doing stereotypical female things like cooking and cleaning rather than doing sport, showing a clear disregard for the women's dignity, which is what the ethics code is in place to stop happening. A coach should show professionalism in all aspects of their time while with the team. This includes not shouting abuse, breaking rules or using gamesmanship to get an advantage. An unprofessional coach might partake in these things and even apply bias in who they are focusing on in training, mainly focusing on their best players and not the ones that need developing even though they need the coach the most. Being late and unprepared for fixtures or training, turning up wearing the wrong attire, lacking communication with players or having bad language, and even not having extensive knowledge on what they are coaching. Responsibility 4 is equal opportunity. A coach also has the responsibility to offer up equal opportunities to all kinds of people no matter what. A competent coach will ensure that all athletes are given equal opportunities, as well as spectators, match officials and parents. Making sure equality is a thing is about recognising inequality and addressing these issues to resolve around each inequality, making everything equal. To achieve this, a coach must make sure training sessions are accessible to all. That includes age, gender, race, religion, ethnicity, sexuality, ability and social status, without prejudice. While planning a coaching session, a coach will have to cater to participants with different motives, goals and needs. In order to achieve this, adaptation of sessions will be needed, and only skilled coaches are able to successfully pull this off. For example, if one of the players on a swimming team is Muslim and is fasting through training, the coach might adapt the session from what they are originally doing to do a lighter session, as the Muslim will not have the energy to keep up with a hard session. Or a more extreme version of adapting a session could be adapting or making new rules to allow those with a handicap to get involved on an equal playing field. For example, walking football, which allows older people to play, as they aren't as mobile as younger people, or even the Paralympics, as they have altered the rules of nearly every Olympic sport to let handicapped athletes perform.